Welcome to all our AERC friends to our Equathon seminar brought to you by Ride and Tie. And Equathon is a form of the ride and tie sport, and we want to share with you this wonderful option you have. If you like to run or you like to ride or you hate doing one or the other, Equathon may be the sport for you. My name is Courtney Kruger, and I have been a board member of the Ride and Die Association for almost 6 years now. I am the editor of our newsletter, and I have almost 3,000 competitive ride and tie miles. I'm hoping to hit that mile marker a little later this fall. We also have Lonnie Newcomb, who is a Dr. Lonnie Newcomb, and she has been a ride and tie member of the Ride and Tie board for a number of years. And Lonnie's huge claim to fame is she has over 4,000 ride and tie miles, and she is the only person in the 4,000 mile club. There is one person who is Janice Helterbrother, who's in the 5,000 mile club, but Lonnie holds the 4,000 club distinctive all by herself. We also have Allison Zaytunian, and Allison is on our board of directors and has been for at least 3. Is it 3 or 6, Allison? 3. And she was very germane to tonight, our 2021 Equathon High Points champion. Rhonda Venable has been a member of our Ride and Die board for just the last year, joined us this year. Rhonda and her husband Dave were recently featured in the Wall Street Journal about Ride and Tie, and in some ways the last decade or so, I think it is fair to say they've been the dominant couple, which is kind of neat. Rhonda is our Ride and Tie sanctioning officer. And so if you're looking to sanction a ride with Ride and Tie, perhaps in conjunction with an AERC ride, Rhonda's the one you're going to get to talk with, and she's going to take good care of you. And she was our 2022 Equathon High Points champion. And so between Rhonda and Allison, we really have some huge Equathon experience in there. And now, last but not least, who maybe should have been first, is Sarah Bolt. And Sarah Bolt is the president of the Ride and Tie Association. Sarah is also famous for bringing what she calls her barn rats to Ride and Ties. These are students that she has, and she's bringing young people in, and there's no telling how many young people, and actually some of your other friends as well, that you've brought into our sport. There's Sarah, our president. There I am riding my horse Coda. There's Lonnie and Allison. That's you on Jimmy, right, Allison?
It is. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then there is Rhonda riding her horse. Which one is that, Rhonda?
Dakota.
And Dakota is, I think, the highest mileage horse in Ride and Die history.
Yep.
So we got a good panel tonight. To begin tonight, I want to just tell you a story about Equathon, and we're going to learn a lot more later, but I thought we'd start with a story. So Equathon basically is somebody rides a loop and somebody runs a loop, and it can be the same somebody, or you can have a partner. And in 2019, my partner was Carrie Barris, who is there featured on the left, riding her horse Comet. And this was the last day of the World Championships. And Carrie and I both did the long course in Ride and Tie on Friday. We did the short course on Saturday, not as a team, but we both did it together, or both did it that day. And so then on Sunday, we had the Equathon, and I said to Carrie before we started, now we're not trying to win this thing. We're not trying to place. We're just going to go out and complete, right? And Carrie said, absolutely. That's all we're going to do. And so the way the Equathon starts is the horses go out first. So Carrie goes out and she rides a 12-mile loop on Comet, and Carrie and Comet just tear up that loop, and they come in before any other horses were even in sight. And the way Equathon works is once the horse pulses down, the runner can go out. And so Comet pulsed down almost immediately, and I headed out. Now, I am there in that middle picture. You can see I'm a middle-aged guy. I am not in the best of shape. I've already run 2 long races the 2 days before, but all of a sudden now we're in the hunt for a Equathon championship. And so I start running as hard as I can run. But I know the 2 guys are going to be somewhere behind me. One is Andrew Murray, and he's there on the right, and the other is Justin Smith, and I don't have him pictured. But these are these 2 Greek gods that are chasing me. But I'll know I've got a head start, and I've got at least I'm trying to figure in my head 4 or 5 minute maybe head start, because Comet's already come in and paced down and nobody else even come in. It's going to take them a few minutes at least to pulse down, and I don't even know how long it's taking them to come in. So I am running and running and running. I've got an 8-mile course to run. I don't know, maybe a couple of miles in, and I happen to look down and see a pink iPhone just on the side of the trail that somebody obviously dropped. So I picked it up to be a kind person, stuck it in my pocket, keep on running. And what I did not know was that Lori Little had used that phone with her horse when she was trying to pace her horse, and she had it set for the pace she wanted to go in her horse. And so now that phone starts talking to me out of my pocket, and it's saying to me, you're off pace. You need to speed up. You're not going fast enough. And I am running as fast as my little legs can carry me. And so I run and run and run, and I get through, it's an 8-mile loop. I get through 6 miles, and that's for that picture in the middle. There actually is an aid station at mile 6. And I yell ahead, I need water, because a lot of people early in the weekend were coming in and kind of lollygagging in that aid station. But I knew I have no time to waste. And so as Ken Pasternak there is handing me the water, just before he does, I jump into a trough of water for the horses to try to cool down. It was a hot day. And I come out, and you can see me grabbing for the top of the water. You can see the water from the trough coming off of me. And I keep on running. And the long story short, maybe long story even too long, is Andrew caught me about 3/4 of a mile before the end. And then Justin caught me about a 1/4 mile before the end. And Carrie and I ended up finishing 3rd in that race. However, before I ran that race, I kind of thought Equathon was a dumb sport. Somebody runs, somebody rides, and we just happen to push them together. What's the fun in that? Where's the strategy? Where's the competition? I learned very differently that day how incredible the competition can be. And I hope that before tonight's over, you've heard some more stories like that, and that you will be encouraged maybe to give Equathon a try as well. So I do want you to know, however, that Ride and Tie and AERC have a partnership. And so Sarah, our president, is going to share with you a little bit about our partnership.
Thanks, Courtney. So let's see, in 2021, we started our partnership with AERC, and it's just as a way to help kind of promote each other. And AERC has been really gracious at letting us do a lot of rides, or rather the ride managers have. So we've been able to bring Ride and Tie awareness to more folks and introduce it to new people, and even get a few endurance riders doing Ride and Tie. But we have a mutual agreement. We kind of help them, they help us. They're actually helping us with this webinar to put it forward to AERC members. And it's been really good so far. We're in our 3rd year now, and we're hoping we can move forward to a 4th year next year.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. So Allison, as I mentioned, our 2021 Equathon points champion, is now going to kind of lead us through. I've given you a little introduction, but lead us through Equathon.
Thank you. Thanks, Courtney. So Equathon's an equestrian event where, like Courtney mentioned, the rider and the horse ride a loop, and then the runner completes a loop. Typically, the riding loop is anywhere between 12 to 15 miles, and the running loop can be 8 to 10 miles. However, we've done shorter and longer, and really, amongst the Ride and Tie group, we've kind of picked and choose what distances we want to do. So if you're interested in the sport and you want a longer loop or a shorter run, just talk to the Ride and Tie ride manager. They're always willing to change up the courses to accommodate what distances we want to do. Courtney also mentioned that the rider and runner can be the same person, which is called Iron Equathon, or it can be a rider and then a separate runner. Why Equathon? So we were trying to think of reasons why someone who does endurance might want to do Equathon. So if you've got 2 people that want to race together, but you really don't like running, and maybe your husband is not a rider but is a runner, so it's a way to bring your running friends out to participate in endurance and Ride and Tie or Equathon. So you can do one or the other or both. If you have a young horse, so maybe you're training a younger horse and you want them to be exposed to the endurance event and all the excitement of endurance, but they're not quite ready for an LD or longer distance, but you do want to expose them. Or maybe you've got an older horse that you've semi-retired, but they still enjoy being out on the trail. You could bring that horse because they can do a 12, to 15-mile loop, which is easier for either a young horse or an older horse. Just note that our rules do say that horses must be at least 5 years of age. If you do an LD or endurance ride the previous day and now you want to go out for a shorter distance, that's a great way to participate on a second day where you don't have to do quite as long of a distance. So, for example, our World Championship is going to be held at Biltmore this year, and Biltmore is a one-day ride. So you could participate in the endurance ride on Saturday and then stay over and participate in our Equathon Championship on Sunday.
So while we're talking about why Equathon, I'm going to put Rhonda on the spot. Why, Rhonda, did you decide you want to do Equathons and ended up winning the 2022 point championship?
One reason was to get my horse, if I couldn't find a riding type partner, like if my partner got COVID, okay, which has happened, I don't have to totally, be without not going to a race. So I could go ahead and still get a great ride in and a run in. Also, I found that if I couldn't find a partner, it was a great way to get my horse some good training. And because most ride managers really work with you, I could go do like a 20-mile ride and then maybe like a 10 or 8-mile run. So we both were getting the training. So that was one of the reasons was I kind of had a hard time finding partners sometimes. So
Lonnie, help us a little bit before the Equathon. It's very similar to AERC, but help us kind of know how things work getting the horse to the event.
So one of the things you need to think about is most of the people listening to this webinar are going to be either riding type people already or AERC people already. But even though it is, quote, only a 12 or 18-mile riding section, it's not to be taken lightly. Is we do follow all the endurance rules. So you don't want to come out here and think you can Yahoo through it. The people who have the endurance experience are going to be the most successful at it because they know how to pace. Because the way that the Equathon is laid out is similar or exactly like an endurance ride. Is the horses have to vet out before the competition to make sure they're sound and able to go, and then they cover the terrain, and then in order for the runner to be able to start, the horse's pulse has to come down to the parameters. And most commonly the parameters are 64 because we're held in conjunction with an endurance ride. And so you go and do the loop. But if you have a horse who's not conditioned, or you have a horse who's not prepared for the group effort of running in a you're not necessarily running in a group of 5 or 10 horses, but a lot of horses aren't prepared. You have to train for an endurance ride. The first year you take your horse to an endurance ride, it's mainly survival. It's mainly trying not to be either going faster than you wish you would, or going a different direction than you wish you would, or going more up and down than you wish you would. And so the first year is, or 2 or 3, is really teaching your horse manners and going in a group and going down the trail. And the same thing is true with Equathon, is you don't want to come out and think, well, I've got old Bubba in the back field here, and I'm going to slap my racing saddle on him and go and run the 18 miles, because you can wear a horse out in 12 to 18 miles. So they really do need to be conditioned, and you're going to be more successful because if you say, I'm an accomplished endurance rider and I've done a bunch of this stuff, so I know that this is one loop, and I'm not going to come roaring in, just like Courtney was saying, I'm not going to come roaring in to the end of the riding section and say, okay, runner, go, because the horse has to come down to parameters in order for the runner to be able to lead. So if you've got an Arabian that's got 3,000 miles and it's done this a whole lot, you're going to be great. Just like Comet was in Courtney's example. Comet comes in, Comet says, I know what I'm doing. I've been ridden with this point in mind, the end of my riding section in mind. And so I am going to pulse down immediately and my runner can leave. Because if you come in with a more heavier built horse, or a horse that's less fit, you might spend a half an hour trying to cool it down in order for its pulse to come down. So endurance mentality is very useful in here. You don't have to be an endurance rider. You don't have to be in and have an endurance horse, but the endurance mentality of taking care of your horse and saying, I'm going to trundle along fairly briskly during this, or you don't have to. You can walk, trot, canter, do whatever you want. There's no speed rules, but you're saying I'm going to trundle along, but when I'm going by my watch, or if I see signs or something that says I'm coming up to the vet check, I'm going to slow down, because if I come roaring in and my horse is hot and panting, I'm going to spend a great deal of time trying to cool it off, and my runner's going to be sitting there twitching, wanting to leave. Whereas if I had come in carefully and come in slowly, the horse would coast in, you climb off, you loosen your girth, you take your pulse, you say, well, darn, I'm already at 64. So that is sort of your goal, is to, again, to take very good care of your horse so your runner can leave on time. And then the pre-ride vet check is exactly the same as an endurance check. I mean, it's not a purchase exam. It's we listen to their heart, is we listen to the guts, we look at all their mucous membranes and things like that. We watch them go as far as soundness. And so once they come across the riding section is done, is that depending on whether you're doing an iron equathon or whether you're doing it separately, whether you'd have two different people, is that if you're doing an iron equathon, you can, once the horse is past the pulse, you can hand the horse over to your crew and say, okay, you need to vet it. He still needs to vet, but his pulse is down, so I can start running, because the clock doesn't ever stop ticking. The clock, your time is still going while you're cooling the horse, while you're vetting the horse and getting its pulse down to the parameters. If you're doing it Ironman, then you would have to, you can't go until your horse is down. And then one of the questions about vetting is that you can leave before your horse vets. You don't have to vet your horse. Somebody else can vet your horse for you. But if the horse doesn't pass the vet exam, if for some reason once it cools down and its pulse comes down, it's got a little hitch in its get along, then unfortunately you get a really, really good training run in, but you can't complete, both of you have to be fit to continue. Well, okay, so the runner can drag their loser carcass across the finish line. That's okay. So runners are okay. But the horse does have to be fit to continue. So that's one reason to maybe vet your own horse before you start running. Of course, if you're Rhonda, you're just itching to run anyway, and you'll run all these loops all the time anyway. But so you vet the horse at the beginning, you ride your horse sensibly. I mean, some of these horses can go really fast, come roaring in and be just fine. But if you haven't done this before, be conscious of the fact that your horse needs to recover before your runner can start. And then the horse needs to be vetted at some point, but in order for everybody to complete. And then so as it says, we have a predetermined, it's not necessarily of course, but we will have a marked start and a finish line. And if you don't see one, ask. I mean, if you say you get here and if you're coming to do an equathon, everybody wants you there, and they want you to be successful, and you can't shut us up. If you say, how do I do this? How do I tie my horse? You can't shut us up. You're going to have to finally walk away if you want us to stop talking. But there will be a pre-ride meeting, because then we'll let you know, because we don't obviously start the equathon at the same time as a ride and tie, or the same time as an endurance ride. Usually they're 15 minutes different or half an hour different, just so the horses aren't all cluttering up the trail at the same time. But we do let you know how long each loop are, what you're going to be running into. But anyway, so the horse part, even though it's shorter, even though it might be 12 to 18 miles, it's still, we take it very seriously, because the safety of the horses is key. And if the horse has a bad day and doesn't complete, then the runner gets to run, but they don't get to complete either.
But when I see down there under the pre-ride meeting, it doesn't say anything about completion time. So how long do I have to finish an equathon?
Most with ride and tie and with equathon, it depends on the race manager, because there is usually not a time limit, especially with ride and tie, but there is a reality time limit. So usually the time limit is the same time limit as if there's an endurance ride going on at the same time, which is pretty luxurious, because if there's a 50-mile endurance ride going on that day, you have 12 hours to finish the endurance ride. So most ride managers, I mean, the ride managers are pretty, if you care to be out there for 11 hours and 57 minutes, they're going to be standing there anyway. You're going to be very hot and tired, but they will be there for you, because the endurance ride does go on for that same amount of time. And the same thing would be true for an equathon. It is a race, but I always say it's a race the way a marathon is a race. Is some people go out there like Courtney. I mean, the thought of running 8 miles really fast over trail is quite exhausting. So I'm very impressed. But But when you run a marathon, some people do train really hard and go really hard and want to win. And the rest of us are so tickled at being able to do an Equathon and be finished without falling down too many times. It's such a riot to be able to do this that there's competition out there, but you don't have to be fast and speedy and wear spandex to do this. You can really be a normal person. My job in Ride and Tie is to be the person that everybody says, oh my gosh, if she can do it, anybody can do it. And that's been my pride for the past 20 or 30 years.
Thank you, because that is one of the wonderful things I think about endurance and Ride and Tie and Equathon is you do not have to go out there and try to win the thing. We just want to finish is to win for us as well. So thank you so much. All right, so moving forward, how we completed Equathon, what to pack.
So, I mean, like Lonnie was saying, a lot of it is just like endurance, or if you do Ride and Tie, yeah, for the horse, you want to make sure you get electrolytes, and maybe if you've got, you need shoes, you have a spare boot, vet wrap, just in case something happens, you can wrap something that might be bleeding, but we're not even going to talk about that. And a sponge, maybe, that would be more for the end, I think. For the runner, a hydration pack, I always just carry a bottle on my saddle. And of course, I don't have a saddle if I'm a runner, but if you're riding, you could just have a bottle on your saddle. Again, electrolytes, carrying all that stuff, snacks if you think it's going to take you a while, and phone maybe if there's cell service. If you're doing an iron, recommend carrying water and drinking lots during the ride. Yep. And then don't go into the run already dehydrated.
And I think, Allison, you may have a story for us about that.
Oh, I've had to ask multiple people. I think, Lonnie, I don't even know if you remember, but I asked you for water one time when you passed me on the trail. I always underpack my water. And I'm very bad about, I'd like to do iron Equathon, and I'm terrible. I worry so much about my horse and making sure that he's hydrated and he's eating and he's drinking that I forget that I need to be eating and I need to be drinking and I need to be electrolyting myself. And so I neglect myself. I take great care of my horse, and then I start my run, and I've started my run hungry, thirsty, and without electrolytes. So I need to focus. So when you do Equathon, and you do the same thing in endurance, in endurance, you have to take care of yourself too, and your horse depends upon you taking care of yourself. Same thing with Equathon. You got to take care of your horse, but you've also got to take care of yourself, because after you go out and ride, if you're doing iron, now you've got to go out and run that loop as well. So I like to take salt tablets with me on the trail. I like to have crackers, like salty crackers or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So whatever that food is that you crave, take it with you, put it in your hydration pack, and however much water you think you need, take that plus extra, because once you get out there, you could be out there for several hours, especially like the OD with the rough terrain. So plan to be out there a couple hours and pack enough of everything that you need.
Okay, so we have gotten to the race, and we have bedded our horse in, and we have everything we need to start the race. Now we're in the middle of the ride. What are we going to do, Allison?
Okay, so after the rider goes out and completes their portion of the course, and in Equathon, we have always done the ride first and then the run second. If you're, like we said, if you're doing iron, don't forget to take care of yourself. Lonnie mentioned that once you ride the loop, your horse must reach pulse criteria taken by an official race staff. So it can't be your crew that says, hey, your horse has pulsed, go. The pulse has got to be taken by official race staff or veterinarian before your runner can leave. And then, of course, the horse must also pass their full veterinary examination with the same parameters that the vets set for endurance and or Ride and Tie to receive the completion.
And this is probably a good time to remind folk again that if you don't like to run, this is a great chance, because you get to ride. We're going to get to the run next, but you don't have to. And that same 2019 race that I was talking about earlier, my brother-in-law, Mark, is typically my Ride and Tie partner, but that day he partnered with my wife, Lee, for the Equathon. Lee does not want to run at all. That's not her thing, but she loves to ride. And so she rode the portion, and then Mark ran the portion. So that's another great example of that.
Yeah, one of the things is it can be done by anybody. It can be done. So we have parents and little kids doing it. We have 2 kids doing it. We have 2 juniors doing it. So you don't have to think that that you've got to be a super, because a lot of us out there, especially if a lot of us don't run, a lot of us hike. And as long as you keep making forward motion, you are doing the deed. So you don't have to think that you have to be like Courtney and run with these people chasing you like the hounds behind you. Is if you just keep making forward motion, you can do it. You can do it at any age. You can do it if you're 70-year-old. You can do it if you're 80-year-old. And I remember we used to compete out west, and again, endurance riders don't think as much as they should about hydration. And because if an endurance rider is going to do this, is they're used to having like 1 or 2 bottles on their horse. But as Allison was saying, this is a whole different ball game in that you're going to be out there. You're going to be covering say if you're going to run 12 miles, then you say, well, my horse can do that in 2 hours. But in fact, for you, it's going to take you 3 to 4 hours to do that if you're on any kind of rough terrain. So like Allison was saying, take whatever water you think you're going to need and then double it. And when we used to run out west, it cracked me up because there was one guy who never carried anything, because as you know, when you're going down the trail, there's a lot of water bottles that have bounced out onto the trail. And he would just run down the trail, scooping up all these water bottles and empty them, drink them. And it was the funniest thing because it really did work. I mean, it worked for him, and he didn't have to carry anything. And every time he came to a water bottle, he didn't actually care where it had been before. He wanted the water. So he would drink the water, set it by next to a tree and run off again. And that was his system. But I think that's the thing so you don't have to be super fit. Anybody can do this. And with any combination, mothers and daughters can do it or anything like that. Husbands, wives, I don't know. There's probably a lot of fighting that goes on, but it's probably good that Lee and Courtney didn't do it. But it can be doable by anybody. You don't have to think that you've got to be super fit to do this, because all you got to do is keep walking.
I just want to piggyback on this. And then there were 2 examples at one of the rides, and it was a mother and daughter who had a special need daughter there. And so the daughter went and rode the horse, and then came back and took care of her daughter while her mother went and did the run. So it was a way you still can bring your kids, and if they're small kids, like there was another couple, they had a baby. And so mom, again, she went and did the riding part, came back and took the baby, and then the husband went and did the run. So, whereas riding tie, they wouldn't be able to do it, so for if you have small children, it's really tough sometimes to still be able to compete, in endurance or riding tie, whatever. But this is one way you can do it.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks so much for telling us that story. That's super. You've done the ride. Now we're going to the run. Allison?
Okay, so we've talked about this. Once the horse reaches pulse criteria, the runner may start their loop. If you're doing iron, someone else can vet your horse through. But if you are vetting your own horse, you must start within 30 minutes of the horse reaching pulse criteria. So what do you do for those 30 minutes? Well, that time can go by pretty fast, because what I typically do if I'm doing iron is I vet my horse through, and then I go back and I grab something to eat, I grab something to drink. And what I like to do, because I just do, is I like to change clothes. So I take off my riding clothes, I put on some shorts, I put on a different shirt, maybe a lighter tank top, and then I'll throw on my hydration pack if I carry my water on the horse. So I do change just for comfort, and then head out on the trail. Of course, take care of yourself on the trail, just like you take care of your horse. I typically electrolyte my horse on the hour, and I also electrolyte myself on the hour. So however you need to electrolyte in order to stay feeling good, do that. I often find, like, if you're out on the trail and you're like, gosh, I'm just not feeling it today, take an electrolyte. It's amazing, like, how quickly those kick in, and you'll feel like a new person out on the trail. So make sure you're taking care of yourself and pay attention to those things that your body is telling you. And then we mentioned this as well, that the clock runs continuously until the runner reaches the finish line.
You made an interesting point there, which is you aren't trying to be super competitive. And so you don't mind taking time to change clothes and all that kind of stuff. If you want to be competitive, you're not going to change clothes. As soon as that horse reaches pulse criteria, you're out. But either way works. And it's great. Whatever you want, what's going to make you have the most fun, you can do.
There's so much information on our Ride and Tie website with all the rules, and also on our YouTube channel. We've got a lot of videos, training videos out there and information videos. To participate in Ride and Tie or Equathon, you must be a member of the Ride and Tie Association. And this was another thing we didn't mention. If the ride portion is longer than 20 miles, we do a mandatory hold time similar to endurance with the time determined by the head veterinarian. Of course, all decisions by the vets are final, and we have the same rules as AERC regarding the ban on foreign substances. So that same list that AEC has is the same list that we follow as well.
Right. Thank you. And so looking just a little bit ahead, Allison already mentioned that the Ride and Tie World Championship will be in Biltmore this year. And I want you to notice that very last line. Carrie Barris is setting up folks who either have a horse and want a runner, or folks who are runners and want to have somebody to be their rider. And she's going to give the fastest runners out first. Carrie is a native of, or as a resident in Asheville. And so she is a member of a couple of different running clubs. And so if you have a horse and you want to ride and you want a runner, then she can get you some good ringers. And so you need to get in touch with her pretty soon. I would mention the easiest way to find her is either through our Ride and Tie website, which is rideandtie.org, all spelled out, rideandtie.org. Or there is a Ride and Tie Facebook page, and there's also an East Coast Folks Ride and Tie page, and all of those are available for you to be able to get in touch with Carrie or any of us.
I want to say that I would love to see some endurance people. I mean, if you're going to come all the way to Biltmore, to Asheville, and participate in the endurance ride on Saturday, why not come early and do a Ride and Tie, or stay late after on Sunday and do an Equathon? We'd love to see some more endurance people participating. Might as well make a whole weekend out of it if you're going to make your way to Asheville.
We won't run through all these, but here are some upcoming Ride and Tie and Equathon races they'll be coming for the rest of this year. You can find all of that also on Ride and the AND is spelled out, tie.org. And you can find the race schedule in there, and under the race schedule will also be the entries for you. If you are a ride manager and you want to think about putting on a Ride and Tie and or an Equathon, there's information for you on the website as well. And as I mentioned earlier, Rhonda will be the one that you will get to be able to speak with. If you have other questions, two great resources. Sue Smythe, unfortunately could not be with us tonight. She is our West Coast, not only Ride and Tie Equathon expert, she is one of the inventors of the Equathon. And so she is a great resource if you're on the West Coast. And on the East Coast, you've heard from Allison tonight, and you can see her email there. And then, of course, as I mentioned, both through Facebook, both the Ride and Tie page, the national page, and the East Coast page. And Sue Smythe also has a Coolest Ride and Tie page that has lots and lots of good information. So, and you can message us through them as well.
Thank you to AERC for letting us do this presentation for their members and being part of that affiliate agreement. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate you helping promote Ride and Tie and Equathon.
All right. Well, thank you all for all of our participants, and thank all those of you that are watching this, and I hope we'll see you out on the trail soon. Bye-bye.